What's up, everybody? I'm here with Aaron Abke again. For those of you who don't know it, I don't know where you have been living, been under a rock. So we're gonna have fun today, talking about the law of one. Aaron, the reason why I am so excited to talk to you about this stuff is because you find somehow, I don't know if this happened to you, and we'll start with our impression of the law of one. But when I found it and I wanted to do research online, I found different takes on how they use the law of one for certain things. And the way I was feeling it when I was reading it, I simply resonated in a way that I couldn't find in many people. And then I found your channel and I saw that you were describing it in a very fresh way and how I was actually resonating with the material too. And, you know, not to say that other people weren't doing something good or anything like that, but just like the way, you know, we seem to have a love for this philosophy is really what I said. Like, yes, Aaron is definitely on the same vein that I am on this. And to me, it was just fascinating to find that we have a lot of things in common, like, for example, the way we connect this with Advaita or non-duality, which I think not many people do. And I think there is that's something that stands out so much for me. And we're definitely going to get into that. But just the general love that you start feeling for the raw material, and something that seems to connect things, because I'll give you my idea into how I started feeling the material was answering my question, and maybe it'll do it did the same to you. But I just felt like it was making all of the confusion once I had my spiritual awakening, all of the confusion that I could find online and on books and everywhere else. I just felt like everything was merging into, you know, coherence. And so this is what really got me, you know, into studying the raw material as opposed to just reading it over and saying, okay, I read the raw material. So you become a student. So how do you become a student in this way? And how did you feel that this started making sense to you too?
That was very much my impression. Yeah, that, as you stated, it came across to me as like, this is probably the most cohesive presentation of spiritual evolution, or really just reality, that I've ever come across. And the law of one is so, as you know, so multi-layered that it's a text you really don't even start getting into until like the third or fourth time through, because it does give such a comprehensive outline of the nature of spiritual evolution and the trajectory of the soul and things like that, that depending on, you know, what other materials you've studied, if you're not very well versed in metaphysics and you come to the law of one first, then it'll probably take you a few pass-throughs, you know, to start integrating the understandings of like the density levels, the order of creation, and the way that oneness is put forward by Ra. And then it's like, once you grasp those concepts, then you go to the next level, which are the intricacies of spiritual evolution with the energy centers and things. So it's like, if you just love to nerd out on metaphysics, it's like the greatest text you could ever come across. But like you said, it not only gives you so much, such a beautifully coherent model of the universe, but it also gives you such a sense of peace that like, somewhere inside I knew like it's all good, all is well, nothing is ever lost. Like, yes, there's suffering, but nothing is ever lost or destroyed in this universe. There's nothing ultimately to fear because our destination is certain, right? It's only a matter of how long will it take me to arrive at that destination. And that's really where Ra meets us and is like, hey, here's the game you're playing. Here's how to play the game better, but there's no wrong way to play the game, right? That's the good news.
Yeah, that is definitely, I think you hit a good point there, especially because when we get into material that is associated directly with spirituality, that center in us that we all seek. As somebody who was raised and grew up as a scientist, I recognize now that my sense of spirituality was invested completely in science. Basically, my own sense of being was invested in all the research of science. So we just can't escape this. We always have to find some belief. Science is a belief. Anything is a belief. Anything that the mind can create is a belief.
Yeah.
So when people seek this or find this, it is, I like to summarize it as, if I can describe it to somebody, is to ask them, do you believe in unity? Do you believe in some sort of unity in between all of us? And the answer is most likely yes. And if that is the underlying assumption, then the raw material is just a way to describe, again, the same thing that we have always gotten from different masters. And that's one of the things that I started to see with Ra, because you see, I love this take on you as well, Aaron, because let me see how do I phrase it. People tend to put on a pedestal, our entities, humans, whatever, even texts, we tend to put them on a pedestal. And it's kind of common for us to do it with humans because, we have Jesus, we put him on a pedestal, Buddha, we put him on a pedestal, and we start worshiping. And with Ra, something similar may happen with the added effect that we're talking about a spirit. That's the first idea that we get. It's a discarnate entity that is talking through, and we're going to discuss something cool about what I have discovered in this whole channelings. But in any case, this entity that is Ra, sometimes we can see it as, oh, it's something, superior than us. And I think the way you also talk about Ra, which also resonates with me, is that, Jesus was a brother. Ra is not even a brother. They're just, part of us. They're just a principle in us. And, just like we can talk about love or beauty, we can talk about Ra in a philosophical way that belongs to us, that it's not, and to us, I just mean the collective us. So it's not something that we should see as something distant from us, but actually something that is within us. And that is how I describe the raw material. It's a part of you that is talking to yourself to give you the answers that you may be looking for in whatever, like you said, beautifully. You have metaphysics, you have history, you have self-realization, you have evolution, you have science, you have chemistry. Anything that you want to talk and nerd about, you have it there. And it's just how the material talks to you. So as opposed to putting them on a pedestal or putting them, too mystic as, these are ETs that are in a different, they reside in the sun and they're entities, they're just a part of you because you are ultimately everything. And so how do we come from the realization that there is something that is communicating with us, and at the same time we are it because we are everything. So I don't know if you want to add something to this, but this is how I see that I enjoy a lot how you and other people also digest this material.
Yeah. This is the nature of the mystical experience, right? The experience of being one's own energy as the energy of the universe, right? Being one with everything. And I think it begins with contemplating this question of like, where do I end? And then creation begins, right? Where's the boundary of me and then the universe? And the more you just really look at that and contemplate it, you really can't find where that line is because you depend on everything so intimately, right? If the sun didn't shine, my heart couldn't beat. If the trees didn't give off carbon or oxygen, I couldn't breathe. If there was no water to drink, if, it could go on and on and on, air to breathe in the atmosphere, if there wasn't an ozone protecting us from the radiation of deep space, it's like everything is supporting me and giving life to my existence at every moment, just like my organs are doing, right? Just like my blood is circulating. Like, I can't find anything that's not really supporting my existence. So you start to feel more like the universe is my body. Like, where this skin ends is not where I end, because it's just one other aspect of what gives me what I depend on for life. I depend on all the external things I just mentioned just as much as my own beating heart and my lungs breathing. So it's like the Ashtavakra Gita says, I am pure light. When the world arises, I alone am shining. You have this experience of everything I look upon is really just another distortion of me. So I love the word that Ra uses, distortion, in the Law of One, because, the first few times I read it, I was applying a negative label to that word, distortion, like, oh, it's some kind of corruption or something. And it just means any kind of manipulation, really, of intelligent energy. Everything is a distortion of the one infinite intelligence, which is the creator. And so I think it's just something we contemplate on a daily basis. And then hopefully our actions and the way we're showing up in life is reflecting that contemplative ideal that I'm one with everything, which means I have to love other people and be of service to them. And that to me is the sort of like quintessence of the service to others path, is that as I serve others as if they are me, I slowly teach myself and prove to myself that I am one with everything. It's like you can only go so far in that recognition, just perception alone. At some point, you have to put it to work and start loving people and serving them. And it's that act of service to others that polarizes us on the positive path, because it's just giving us, I think, experiential nexus to feel and experience being one with others. You really only get that, through service, right?
Yeah. The service to others. That's one that, let's take a little pause there, because I think one of the things that I realize, Aaron, speaking of service to others, is that when you read the raw material, the first thing you realize is that, okay, evolution, it's about service to others or service to self. So I need to I'm on the positive path because I resonate with all of this stuff, and I need to be of service to others. Now, we naturally think about the action, the being, the activity that we're going to do, for service to others, because that's what implies. And I know that Ra at some point say that there is no proper way to describe service to others, but it's the best way they can find in our language to, in essence, explain or point towards the feeling of being of service to others. And so I had to ponder on that for a while. It took me a long time just to see how this natural develops in me, because the more you try, it's like it's that principle of the Taoism, the Wu Wei. It's just allow things to flow effortlessly. So just let things happen. And the one thing that we're going to get into later on is that the more I started to relax myself into being and to just being, then more things started to show as automatic service to others, that I didn't have to put an effort into it. It was just me. And even I couldn't, notice if I was being of service to others, but just by, the reaction of people, or simply how my life, just instead of being surrounded by negative things, I suddenly just started to see more positive in the world. And so later on, I realized that this was an effect of me becoming, like you said, more loving towards everything, because the more you know yourself and you realize that you are, yes, you're not your cells, you're not your thoughts, You're not, this body or the mind. And so that means that this localized point of consciousness that you are is really the basis for all the existence of anything else. And so in the same way that I need the body for movement and experience, I need everything else that is around me for experience. And so I become this vast field of the universe that it is. And that just automatically makes you think or see the universe difference in people and everything. And suddenly, like you said, loving others is not even an activity. It's just something that you are, it's like suddenly this hand became aware that this hand was connected by, this body and says, oh, okay. It's like, let's live together. Let's just,
I love you. Yeah.
Right. It's automatic. It's just like,
yeah,
I'm so grateful that you're here. So this is the realization that I got with service to others. And to me, if I can describe it, and I would love your take on this, is that, like Ross says, first know yourself. This, I would love your take on this too, because the first time I read it, I was just like, come on, Ra, this is all you're going to say? Know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator? Like, what does that mean? Right. But once you get more deeper into all of this, you realize that knowing yourself is this part, and then accepting yourself becomes sort of, the only way. And that's how you become the creator in the sense of realizing this distortion that we all are, which is part of the same thing.
Yeah, I love the passage where Ra describes the opening of the indigo ray as it's the center of knowledge of self as the creator. And Ra says, when this center is opened, service to others becomes automatic. Because it's like that would be true, right? If you genuinely, authentically perceived everyone as just you having a different experience, you'd be incapable of not being loving, because it's you and you naturally love yourself. So it's like, we could even back up, and maybe this is more of a non-duality take on it, but like, how am I everything? Well, if there is only one creator, one intelligence, one energy, like it has to know itself. If it's going to discover what it is, it has to do so in a seemingly linear way, in the sense of, if I have like a favorite, dessert or something, and I'm just so in love with this dessert, I'm like, well, I want to know how I make this dessert so that if my favorite chef leaves town, I can still make this dessert for myself. So you got to get in there and dissect every ingredient in that dessert, whatever it is. And then you've got to slowly work on making that dessert yourself in your own kitchen, ingredient by ingredient. So in the same way, or in a similar way, if the creator wants to know itself, it has to do so through some kind of pathway like evolution, a slow progressive journey, so that it can taste every flavor, every gradient of what it is, piece by piece. So if I was having the experience of being everywhere all at once, all the time, then what would that be like, right? It really wouldn't be an experience like we think of an experience. In fact, it would probably be something like, Om, for eternity. You're experiencing every sound, every atom all at once simultaneously. So you can see how, if the source wants to know itself, it has to localize itself, like you said, in a point of consciousness. So the ego says, I'm everything. Bogus. I don't believe that. If I'm everything, why am I experiencing just this one point of view? Why shouldn't I experience the tree's point of view and that guy's point of view and everyone's point of view if I'm everything? And the simple answer is because that wouldn't be an experience of anything, right? It would just be allness, which is what the creator is. It wants to know what allness is made out of, which is you and I individually. Each little fragment of the divine is being realized slowly, gradually through evolution. So you're like, wow, the source is doing some incredible thing in each and every one of us. But if I know myself as a point of consciousness that is just emanating from the creator, like a ray of sunlight from the sun, then I automatically know you as that. And so that's the sameness that we find. I find sameness with you, not because you look like me, you talk like me, you like the things I like. That's not where we find sameness. fact, thank God everyone doesn't look like me and talk like me and like what I like. What a boring universe, right? We naturally want diversity because we're infinite in nature. So I want you to have a different expression of that sameness as me. But what's the same about us is the consciousness, the awareness, the existence, and the fact that we are creators, right? You and I are always creating all the time, and we can't escape that because that's what we fundamentally are. So to me, that's what the law of one is getting at, is to celebrate the diversity and uniqueness of all things as all different reflections of the same one. And so it's on the basis of that sameness, the one essence, that we love and serve others. And it's like we're in such a dense illusion, especially here in third density, that it's like we got to do something almost like drastic to get out of this heavy illusion. Like we're walking through molasses or something. And it's the service to others that really wakes us up. It's that karma yoga, good actions that alleviate the inertia of our bad actions, our selfish actions. When we act selflessly, it's sort of like a confrontation to the ego's way of thinking, that I'm a separate self, I'm an isolated person, individual and separate. If that was true, then I would never serve others, right? It would be just pure Darwinian evolution only. I would look out for number one, fight to get to the top, survival of the fittest, baby. You're my enemy, you're in my way, I'm going to step all over you to get to victory. That would be rational if separation was true. So service to others is this act of like gradually annihilating that perception by acting in direct opposition to it, right? If my ego wants me to only act separate and I just keep acting one, eventually I will destroy that perception and I will see the sameness in all things. And to me, that's the brilliance of the service to others path, is that it's like, you don't even have to understand this, man. Just be kind to others and serve them in whatever way possible. And slowly but surely, whether you see it or not, you are polarizing your consciousness towards fourth density.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. There's just that part that was very inspiring for me to listen to you in the enjoyment of multiplicity, because I think I agree with you in the sense that I think we initially as humans, the way we have been conditioned is that we think that, yeah, we need to act, we need to do something, for to save the planet, to do this. And I don't know if you agree with me here. I know some people may not, but I don't believe in ideals. I don't believe in anything. In fact, I believe that ideals are sort of toxic or poisonous, because an ideal is already putting a category, or by a certain bias, saying how things should be. And this is how we get into the trouble of, we need to do something and we need to do it fast. There's some, I've heard, especially at the beginnings when I was studying the law of one, I saw a lot of interpretations in this way. And I started to feel that this material was giving us information to escape this reality. And then, something didn't click with me. And I said, no, there's something else here that just doesn't resonate with what I'm listening to about the law of one. And it's just that, like you said a little while ago, everything is fine. Whatever we do is fine. There are no mistakes, like Ross says. There are no errors. And when we come to realize this, the liberation and the possibility of loving and adoring multiplicity, even the so-called negatives, just becomes fantastic. Just becomes something like you say, wow, this is beautiful. In fact, another thing that people interpret in their own material, and I try to sometimes, bring them to a positive or more beauty appreciating way, is that because it is, and I gotta say, I always laugh at this because I think it's hilarious. It's just beautiful to me that this planet is such a it's such a mix. When you get into the raw material and you see that we have people from Maldek, Mars, and other planets that have repeated third density cycle, it's just like it's like a madhouse. It's just like it's filled with all these people. And I just think this adds to the beauty, just like in nature. I don't know. I mean, I wish I knew more planets, but I feel that planet Earth is filled with so much diversity. Like we have so much in nature. We're always finding new species and so on. And so that adds to the beauty. And so just appreciating without the ideal that things should be one way or another, and that we should be doing this and we should be progressing that way. That is not to say, obviously, that there is an evolution and that's something that's happening, but this evolution is happening naturally, like you said, either on the positive path, which is the one that accepts everything, that loves everything, especially in third density. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to open your acceptness of everything, if I could use that word, just accept everything. Just take it in, say, yes, I surrender to this. This is beautiful. And yeah, that's just like something that I wish more people could see, only because it's so beautiful to see the world this way. I just wish more people, I think both of us want to share this, because maybe this is the driving force that we have, to create videos and talk to people, because it's just so beautiful to see the world this way. And you see some people in some struggles, and you just wish you can share this with them and say, like, hey, listen, it's beautiful out there, just go and enjoy it. So
yeah, you're missing out.
Yeah.
It's just like the Course in Miracles says, how we're just creating all of our own problems by seeing things as separate and attacking reality. It's the more you zoom out and look at it, it is really insane for any person to think that what reality does, what happens in the universe is wrong and a mistake, and I can fix that mistake on behalf of the universe, whatever it is, politics, gender identity, we could go on and on. There's so many ways that the human race is trying to war against reality. And that's one of my favorite definitions for the ego personally, is the ego is like the mind's conflict with reality.
Ooh.
And we can see this in our society, right? The way everything's just built on separation and survival of the fittest still. And I think we'll have to leave that system and start creating a new world based on service to others, because that, the nature of the negative polarity, as Ra says, is magnetic. So it draws within itself, unto itself, forever and ever. Like it's like a black hole. It'll just keep sucking everything into it. So the materialistic greed and capitalism and desire for more will never be quenched. It just grows exponentially as it gets fulfilled. So we have to just see the futility of that thought system and just begin to leave it and start building a world based on service to others. And I think that won't happen until we start either demonstrating or proving to humanity that service to others really is the highest source of joy and fulfillment one can have. Far greater than the product you're buying or selling is the fulfillment you gain from bringing value to another being and seeing them made happier as a result. You can't put a price tag on that. And, we're just in this phase of moving out of that state of consciousness slowly but surely. And I think little factions or little cities, little communities will start popping up everywhere that are just rethinking everything, economics, society, the way we do things, and building models that thrive on service to others. Like the value you give is the value you get. So it incentivizes giving rather than incentivizing taking in the sort of capitalist model. And I was just reflecting on this yesterday because I was watching a little interview from a guy named Jeremy Corbell. Do you know who that is?
No.
He works with Dr. Stephen Greer, if you know who he is.
Yeah.
He's done a documentary with him before. He's a filmmaker, and he's really like active in the UFO world and trying to bring awareness of UFOs and extraterrestrial contact to the mainstream. So he's been on Fox News a few times, doing interviews about insider information he gets from the Navy or the Air Force or whatever about their interaction with UFOs. And he's just a guy that gets a lot of insider information from the military sources and stuff. So he was saying on this interview I watched the other day on not Howard Stern, Howard Hughes. He said we are firing upon UFOs, like attacking, trying to shoot down They call them UAPs now. Our military tries to shoot down UAPs on an almost daily basis, unbeknownst to most people. Like there's so much UAP activity in our skies that our military interacts with that he said just as early as last Friday, we launched a bunch of missiles out of UAP trying to knock it out of the sky. And of course, they just disappear into a higher density or whatever. But it's like, it's so embarrassing. It's so cringy that we're doing this.
Yeah.
It's such a remnant of third density consciousness that that's just one of the tests that extraterrestrials have when they're visiting planets to try and be of service. They're like, hey, let's just show up. And if they're third density, they'll shoot at us, and if they're not, they'll welcome us in and we can have contact. And so it's cool to see how a growing number of us, as consciousness is progressing on this planet towards fourth density, are hearing this stuff about our government planning, a fake UFO attack, or the way we attack UFOs in the sky, or we talk about them like they're a threat. And almost all of us collectively are like, boo, stop that. We don't want that anymore. We're tired of this crap. We know that they're not enemies. We know that they're not here to harm us. But they would have us on their slave ship in Andromeda by now. Like there's clearly not a threat here. But in our military and government's third density way of thinking, it's like, they're a threat, they're a threat, they're a threat. Everything's a threat, because it's all survival-based thinking. So if we don't make the change, it won't be made, right? Because it surely isn't going to be made on behalf of our government or military. We can't wait for them to evolve. We've got to push the needle forward in that sense.
Yeah, no, waiting for them to evolve is like trying to make a negative pole of a magnet just becomes positive somehow. It's just, that's
Right.
what they're there for. That it was founded on, survival, like you said, and conflict and domination somehow. Yeah. So we need to conquer, that's our old mentality.
Yeah.
But I think the ramifications of what you say is really what's happening in terms of evolution, because it's inevitable that we're going to continue. And this is what I love about the metaphysics of the law of one, that it just shows you that it's an inevitable thing. It's like Ross says, it's like the clock strikes the hour, or the needle that strikes the hour on the clock. And so all we can do is become these channels for, like you said, just simply being that I don't want that crap anymore. Like I don't consent to that, simply by just you yourself. You don't have to go in activism, or you could do it, but it's just not necessary. All you need to do is just consciously say, I don't agree with that. And voicing your opinion is always, I guess, additional and optional. But I think the biggest work is just one, realizing and saying, because, a long time ago, well, maybe not me, because even though I was atheist and everything, I always thought that that never made sense to me. As much ignorance as I had in my past, UFOs to me were just, they're if they have the technology, like you said, they would have had us right now. They have the technology to fly. We don't. That means superiority. So why?
Should be obvious, right?
That doesn't make sense. Yeah. But these are one of the things that also, I think, Aaron, and I love you for this, brother. Thank you so much for being this voice, because you put it very clear, man. You see, when people, I feel like a lot of people talk about raw and channel material in an apologetic way, saying like, well, it's possible that, and at least the way I get it from you is the same way I communicated. I do feel that this is real, so I don't need to, cover it in the possibility that it may not be. I feel that the message is real. And, we start uncovering all this mystery about UFOs and ETs and interdimensional beings, spirits, and so on. Like let's just bring it down to earth, talk about it as a real thing, a real phenomenon. It's just like, it is as simple. And I think this is just our issue with it. It's the same issue, only that we're more related to this as humans, but not being able to speak truly and freely about interdimensional beings. Let's just put it at that, because ETs is a limited view of seeing it in my view, perspective. But just interdimensional beings that exist in different densities or dimensions. Talking about them is as strange as talking about love, because we haven't made that connection that love is something real. In science, we can't measure love. We can measure brain activity and emotional reactions, the nervous system, but we don't know what love is. Can you explain love? Can you write an essay? Can you create a book? Philosophers for ages have always said, we don't know what love is. It's just some condition and something that the body has. So something that we know as an experience that is true, which is love, something that you feel all the time. Which, by the way, when you were talking about how people discover this service to others, is directly related, like how people want to be of service to others is with their passions. If you discover your passion, you almost invariably realize that your passion lies in trying to help other people. Almost always. Like, I work with people on this. I help them discover, what they like to do. And they all wanted to do something that was of benefit to others. So service to others is inherent already in you. It's just developing that passion. But you see, all of this, Aaron, seems to be on that metaphysics side. Love, your passion, all of that is it's on the metaphysical side. We don't talk about that much here. And I love that you bring this to the table and that you just talk about it as something as real as a body or as the sun or as chemistry. It's really real. And also another thing that is coming out, and I'm sure you're pretty much aware of all this stuff, is just the science is finally saying, okay, of course, not institutional science, but a lot of people like Nassim Haramein, I don't know if you're familiar with him. I think what these guys are doing is incredible. And all of this is just signaling the accommodations that we're making for forward density. And like I said, it's just that one, resonance that we have and how we become these channels for this information. So I don't know if you wanted to add something, but.
Yeah, well, I could just add the idea about how do you know that this is authentic material? I've heard that a few times. And, to be honest, from the moment I first read the book, I had no doubts whatsoever. It was authentic. I think if you have a certain understanding of metaphysics and spiritual truths, that you read this text and you just go, oh my goodness, if this is fraudulent, somebody could have taken credit for the most amazing spiritual text ever written. And I mean, super advanced spiritual understanding and how to use spiritual technology that supersedes where we're at by hundreds of years. Somebody could have taken credit for that if they really just made it all up and gotten super rich and famous off this text. And instead they chose to remain anonymous and pretend it was a ET that channeled it all. Like, I don't see that being very likely. Secondly, we understand the negative path will never concede to the path of light. It'll never say, love other people and be selfless, give to others, be kind and compassionate. Do not seek to infringe upon free will. The negative path would never teach people that stuff. That's the direct opposite of what their philosophy is. So if you would have to say, well, it's a service to self entity, pretending to be a positive entity and giving you all these amazing spiritual tools to polarize on the positive path, that doesn't make sense. And then thirdly, we can, like you said, there's a ton of evidence that's come out in recent decades, scientifically, just in events that have happened that the law of one predicted, 40 years ago now. There was the discovery of Venus being in the habitable zone in September of 2019. It said, Venus was actually the Goldilocks planet for a couple of billion years, beginning about 2 billion years ago, which is exactly what Ra says. Wow, great prediction on the part of the imposter who made that text up, right? So it's like, those are all very validating, but even just the metaphysical principles taught, how to use crystals, how to understand the energy centers, how to activate them, how to balance them, all these practices I've put into place and seen the benefits of them. I've seen that, yes, you actually can balance your energy centers through the practices that Ra gives, through the disciplines of the personality. Yes, there clearly are density levels of consciousness, separation in levels of consciousness, like Ra points out. We can see them clearly in our own reality. The level of consciousness this plant in front of me has is clearly different than the consciousness my dog has, which is also very distinct from the consciousness I have. It's like we're at 3 different levels, right? Or densities. So there's so many things that you can just look in your direct experience in life and in your own practices and verify that it's true. So you have to say someone evil and malevolent made up all that stuff that actually is true and gives you a ton of benefit on the positive path. I don't see that as being true. The only conclusion we can really come to, in my opinion, is that this is obviously a genuine text, that the 100 best spiritual minds who've ever lived couldn't come together and make a text this brilliant. I mean, truly, it's on a level of spiritual genius we've never seen before. So if you recognize that, to me, there was just absolutely no doubt if we ever were going to communicate with a truly advanced extraterrestrial race, and they were going to explain to us the nature of the universe, we would go, wow, it would probably be something so mind-blowing we couldn't even conceive of it. It's like, bingo, that's exactly what the law of one is. It feels exactly like a genuine contact. There's no, even just a question and answer format, right, of the non-infringement of free will, and like, can you tell us about this? No, you're not ready to know that. Like, if someone's making up a text, they're probably going to pretend to give away all the goodies and razzle dazzle you with special knowledge. And Ra keeps a lot of that knowledge to themselves, saying it's not in your best interest to tell you this yet. To me, it all just reflects a genuine contact.
There's a letter, Aaron, that I don't know if you read. I think it's in this 40s session, 45, something like that, where Don gets a letter back from the editor that he wanted, to publish the books. And this guy, I just love it. It's hilarious how the guy in just a couple of pages says, like, you're trying to tell me, I mean, I resonate with all of this stuff. I love, the Atlantis and this and that, but you're telling me that you have information about, so much stuff. It's just like so packed in this material that you're channeling. And how do I explain this to people? How do you explain this to people? People want to know, more of the details and, something more exciting, something more, this is it's not legible. You can't make sense of this. Just the response that Don got was just funny. And then, he comments it with Ra, and Ra says, like, well, if you do that, then the contact is basically over, because we cannot simplify things. We give the information as it is. And so even that, gives to the legitimacy of the information that was being given. Was, like you said, if we could contact, and I always used to joke about how I haven't said it in a while because I haven't had the question, but I remember as a kid, I would read mythology and stuff like this, and I'm like, I want the real information. Like, this is confusing, I want, and people would complain, oh, Jesus parables are hard to understand, all of this. And Ra, to me, was like, okay, you guys are finally ready for all the information without being shrouded in anything. I'm just going to give it to you raw, no pun intended. And it's just like all the information there, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now this is too much. It's like, okay, so you want it simplified?
Bigfoot, I'm out. You lost me. Yeah.
So, there's just, I call it the most sophisticated information that we have about anything and everything, from evolution, chemistry, science, and all of this, to metaphysical evolution, unity, realization of the self. I mean, there is nothing that I can't find there, at least a parallel or something. And the best part of it is that it's not, this is what I really love about it, that the majority of us are not dogmatic about it. In fact, I don't think I've ever found somebody dogmatic about the law of one, but rather it's just a way of saying, hey, listen, here's a sophisticated way of talking about all those things that seem shrouded in mystery for some people, or even in not only in metaphysics and spirituality, but in science, because we do get, like you said, some beautiful, it's just a beautiful model of explaining the evolution of energy, because all we know that exists is energy. We know this at a quantum level. Okay, so we have energy. And what would energy do? How does energy behave? And we can see already that energy behaves in specific patterns, and those patterns seem to evolve, and those patterns seem to complexify themselves. And suddenly we have what we call basic subatomical particles. Oh, great. Mm-hmm. From there, what else happens? What does your experience tells you? Well, if that's what everything is made of, somehow it complexified itself into more patterns that created this and that. And now we have matter. And from matter, I remember when I was a reader of Carl Sagan, one of the things that got me was like, how did organic molecules became alive? Like that's right. the missing link. And now the raw material tells you, well, it's just the upward spiral of consciousness, upper spiraling of light that just simply wants to grow and move. And so that makes sense. And you say, well, sure, if we add in consciousness to this, then it makes sense. So we have the missing link there between matter and what we call life. And so then we go to, okay, but animals, they started evolving and multiplying, and we have all the diversity. So how does the human become conscious? That is the other missing link that we have, animals and humans. And so when you explore in the law of one, well, if you add in consciousness, you actually have the same thing. You add the missing link. It is just the evolution of consciousness into trying to realize itself, because that's the only difference that we have. We may have others, but the main thing is that we are aware that we are aware. That's it. It's all there is. And everything else that we have, culture, religions, and wars, and academies, and whatever, all of this is a result of us being aware that we are aware when we look at it fundamentally. So, and up it goes into the point where we say, where is humanity going? Well, Jesus, if you have an idea that we have been, going through this quantum leaps, then we must pay attention to what we're feeling. And what is this feeling that we all have? We come at it just a couple of minutes ago when I said, it's love. That's what consciousness gives you. When you're aware that you're aware, all you can have is love for everything, because you know that, wait a minute, you are aware that you are aware and I am aware. So we're both the same thing. Oh, this is awesome. So this is the next step. And so on we go. So to me, it's present, like you said, in our experience. And it's just a matter of finding it and exploring it to its highest self.
Yeah, well said. It's not a matter of how does a human become conscious, but how does consciousness become a human? It's the organizational patterns, like you said, of intelligent energy that Ra describes how they're upward spiraling, not literally directionally, but the upward spiraling, Ra says, refers to the pattern of energy always seeking towards the creator, always trying to go back to its source. It's like the creator, explodes itself into trillions of infinite atoms, every atom in the universe, or quantum particle, really. And they're all trying to make their way back, like a bubble towards the surface of the water, of the ocean, making their way back to the creator so that when the bubble meets the surface of the water, it just becomes the atmosphere again. It returns to the allness, as Ra says. And it's like we're all like those bubbles floating back up to the surface of the ocean. And that's what seventh density leads us to, is that contact with the surface of the allness and then disappearance back into the source. So as we're floating up, it's like, oh, some bubbles are down there in first and second density. Some bubbles are up there in fourth and fifth density. But it's like we're all returning back to our source, which we all are. I mean, just that recognition is impossibly loving, just to know that. It's like we're all one. We're all in this together. What a beautiful, beautiful beyond description, right? Words can't do it justice. It is the most blissful, ecstatic realization one can have. And you have to perceive that you're separate from someone, that you aren't of the same source or quality in order for anything but love to be there. So that's why the negative path wasn't developed, right? Until the veil of forgetting was created by one of the logos. It was an idea conceived of at one point, because they were like, hey, everything's going great. We're all loving each other and it's fun, but like no one's seeking to evolve because everything's so perfect. So what can we do to introduce seeking towards evolution? It's like the bubbles were just staying on the sand or something, right? And then one logo said, why don't we cover their remembrance from who they all are and then see what happens as a result of that? And what happened was the belief in separation was created, which then allowed for something like the negative polarity to be born. And then the negative polarity, like you said earlier, serves still the creator to know itself in a very divine way. Because, as much as we might complain about the, totalitarian globalist leaders who are trying to take the planet over and make it a slave planet, it's like they're still serving the creator, because how would we possibly know the value of love and unity without separation and fear and darkness? Like it wouldn't have a context, would it? So if I can see that now, I actually transcend darkness by loving it, by seeing its purpose. And then it's like, I'm not worried anymore. I'm not afraid anymore of the path of darkness, because I literally see it as part of me. It's a necessary play in the creation, which is why I think Ra refers to the fifth density negative being as our friend and our companion. It's like Ra's not just trying to be, a good example or something, right? They're actually expressing how they see this being. It's our friend playing a very necessary role, like a play actor or something. And, it's funny because Dawn is like taking a long time to get this concept. Like, okay, so you're telling me I need to love the fifth density being? Am I hearing you correctly? And Ra's like, there is great humor in your attempts to love the negative being. Such a great passage.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that part. I think, that I actually made a joke about that part not long ago. Ra's like, yeah, there's great humor in you trying to give, because there is an incompatibility there, in trying to, if you give them what they want, then you are, losing what you're actually doing. Right. If you keep doing what you're doing, then you're going to lose what, that one part I said, okay, Ra, you got me there with the humor. That was funny.
Yeah. There's a couple funny parts where Ra's sense of humor comes out. What's the other one I'm thinking of? Ra literally says, like, they give some example and they're like, this is an example of a pun or something like that.
Oh yeah.
They're so intellectual about it.
Yeah. The one that really got me to it, I thought it was really funny, is of course in the 80s, they were talking about, and it was the time of the UFOs and close encounters. So they say close encounters, so Don is saying this. So which by the way, I think it was beautiful the way they explained close encounters, the idea of the experience, right? But in any case, Don is saying like close encounters, and there's one part where he says like close encounters 3 times. And Ra responds, and then they say, by the way, in essence, I'm paraphrasing, but they say, we find it very humorous that you say close encounter for are not all encounters of
very,
close
very
type,
close.
very close, because we're all one. I'm like, okay, I got you there.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, I thought it was funny.
I also love when they make them redo the circle of one and blow over the instrument because there's like a negative infringement or whatever. They're like, should we repeat the circle of one and all that? And they're like, yes, you should. So they do like the marching and the mantra and the whole thing. And then they sit down like, okay, did we do it? Like, did it work? And Ra is like, yes. And we also must say we were enjoying the humor of this repetition.
I don't remember that one, but yeah, I think they said that. Oh, I think I brushed it through. I never realized that.
Yeah, Ra's cheeky, man.
Yeah, they have their things.
I love their emphasis on just like, so many times Dawn will ask like, what do we do? It's so serious. How do we help Carla and protect her from the dark entities and stuff? And they're like, just relax and understand that love's the fundamental truth. Like just enjoy and celebrate and rejoice in the love and light of the creator. This is the greatest defense you can possibly have. because a negative being can't be around that energy without being depolarized. Only when you concede to their power by fearing them do they actually have power over you.
Mm.
Like, isn't that true for everything? Isn't that true for the corruption in our world? Isn't that true for an victim of an abuser? Like, ultimately, we're always giving our power to the darkness. It never can take it from us unless we willingly concede it or are deceived into conceding it. But Ra even says, like, the negative path is not able to create distortions in you. They're not able to like cause you direct harm that you didn't have previously. All they can do is manipulate distortions you already have. So the being who's crystallized and purified of all flaws can't be manipulated by a negative being. And that's why the negative path always seeks the neophyte, the foolish people, right? The ones who are ignorant of the games being played. Those are the ones they go after. They're not trying to go manipulate a highly polarized fourth density being or something. They come to third density where there's the veil, and that's where they get their pickings from, right? So we only have to arm ourselves with true self-knowledge and with love, and there's nothing to fear.
Dude, that is so powerful, what you just said there. I love it. Thank you.
It's good news, right?
Yes, yes. Because, yeah, it's almost like an environment that we create. And you can even see the gratitude that we have for negative beings for being able to highlight our own, let's call it negative patterns, whatever struggles that we may have or darkness in us. We must always be grateful of those, let's call it negative entities that are always showing us that, because then we can bring love to that. And no matter how you do, I mean, just bringing love to whatever negative distortion you may have in your being, just by bringing love to it, you're simply depolarizing it. So you're integrating it, as it were, into you. And so you can see the necessity that we have for negative beings, and thanks to them is that we have this experience of evolution, because like you said, otherwise we would all be crystallized beings like before the veil, and everybody would be happy, no issues, no experience.
And it would have no meaning.
It would have no meaning. Exactly. Yeah.
I think about that a lot, man, how especially people that read the law of one go, oh, we're in third density. That's like the worst density level. Fourth is so much. Ross says fourth is like heaven compared to this density level. I can't wait to get out of here and be a fourth, fifth density being. And I'm like, I understand that for sure. Obviously that is going to be a blast, right? To be a light body and stuff. But like, let's not be so quick to judge the reality we're in as inferior. Because Ra says this is the sort of the playground for higher density beings to test what they're made of, the proving grounds. This is the virtual reality game we put ourselves into to see what are we really made out of, right? Yeah, we can talk the talk all we want, but like go to third density and see if you can walk the walk. And we're doing that right now, right? We're in the Hunger Games, so to speak. We're on the TV screen that everyone's watching, going, whoa, can you believe what he's doing in his lifetime underneath the veil? Like, yeah, it's not as big of a deal to do that without the veil, because we all know that already. But he's forgotten it. And look, he's still remembering his true nature beyond it all. Like that has so much meaning and beauty. So why don't we see that achieving enlightenment, liberation, self-realization in this lifetime is like the highest achievement of any density level could conceive of, because you don't get to bring all your knowledge and memory with you of your past lives and all this stuff. You just get to see what you're really made of vibrationally. And those beings who find the light under the shroud of third density, what incredible meaning does that have in this realm, where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe in fourth density, you'll be super enlightened and full of love and service to others, but so will everybody else. Right? Yeah. You really have a chance to do something unique and special in this incarnation, where almost everybody's under the veil of ignorance and almost nobody remembers who they are. And in this realm, you can be a shooting star that lights up the world for everyone to see. You can do something truly meaningful here. So like, let's not be in such a rush to escape third density, but let's make the most out of it. so that when we do go back to the other side, people go, "Whoa, man, what a show you just put on." Like, that's how I want to live my life, right?
Yeah, man. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking that we can even check this in our own desires and experience to enjoy third density, or to enjoy our, let's call it, mundane life. When I was a kid, I played a lot of Nintendo, and I remember some of the games being super easy because they had infinite continues, infinite lives, infinite
Right.
ammo, and so on. And so it was one of those games that I would play one day, finish it, and man, I don't want to play it again.
Right.
And then I had something like Ninja Gaiden, if you remember that game.
Or Super Mario,
Which one?
like the original Mario, you get 3
Oh my
lives, you got to
God,
start all over.
yes.
Like, nobody beat that game.
No, exactly. So I was talking to my son the other day, and we were talking about he loves retro games and how difficult really Ninja Gaiden is. And that was to be the game that I play the most because it
Yeah.
was, it was there was such a sense of achievement to me to go through all the struggles and the deaths and the repeats, and you finish your continues, and there was a programming error at the end which reverted you to the beginning of the stage as opposed to, it was just brutal. If you
Oh,
look it up
man.
online, it was a brutal game. But to me, it's the one that I remember the most and that I actually enjoy still. And I have my reflex when I play. And then I said, this is the same thing we're doing here. We're going into
Yeah.
the biggest struggles, and we want to actually go through this because the achievement of, like you said, remembering, and the pleasure, the orgasmic feeling, which is something that you get. It's just like a constant pulsating thing in you when you realize that you are this. That is, to me, what is worth third density, and I wouldn't change
Yeah.
it. I mean, I don't crave fourth density. I think they're phenomenal. I just know that this is what I love. I love
Yeah.
it being in this position. Yes, I can recognize my past and having so many struggles and so on, but everything is worth it in the end. And
Yeah.
especially knowing right now, the experience of death and what I have experienced in the past years with my parents dying, and also reading DMT, near death experience, all I see is that there is just a beauty and ecstasy in all of this. Like, death is really, this transformation that we are.
Yeah.
And so there is no issue. There's no struggle in the end. It's just the experience, And so
Yeah.
in the same way, I was thinking how one of the most popular shows in all history now is Game of Thrones. And Game of Thrones is one of those shows that completely destroyed your expectations at any level,
Yeah.
So, and the books as well, obviously, they they do a much better job, but it's just the way in which how you're used to things and how you believe that things are going to be, you're comfortable there, it just snaps you out of it, and you're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You see, so it's
Yeah.
the struggle that makes the experience. So that's,
Absolutely, man.
yeah.
One of my favorite, probably my favorite quote from the Buddha is when his disciples asked, essentially, like, "Oh, is this your last lifetime, Buddha? Are you not coming back here again?" And Buddha perceived the real question they were asking, which is like, "Are you getting out of this shithole, man? I'm sure you are, right?" And so he speaks to their deeper question, and he says, "If you could see the world the way I see it, you would want to come back here for 1,000 more lifetimes."
Wow. Yeah.
Like, if that's true, if there's a way that I can see the world that makes me full of joy and love, and I can't wait to come back again, like, isn't that the highest accomplishment there is for a soul? I mean, I would say so. And I don't know if you watched my latest Law of One video on higher self incarnation, manifesting the higher self.
I haven't.
Have you seen that one yet?
No.
Okay, I think you're going to like it. So the idea is that, as Ra explains, our higher self is, programming our catalyst in this lifetime. and trying to bring us the experiences without infringing on our free will that lead us and guide us to the highest possibility, which is enlightenment. So you could say that the highest accomplishment for the higher self is to guide you in such a way that you become self-realized. And when you become self-realized, you essentially become the higher self, right? You sort of manifest your higher self in an incarnation. So you go, okay, so the higher self is dreaming me, in a sense, like the final completed version of me at late sixth density after all my lifetimes. That's who I really am fundamentally. I am the self that has crossed the finish line already. In the same way, like in this human lifetime, we dream every night, a new experience, a new dream lifetime. And what's the best experience we can have in a dream is becoming lucid, right? And going, oh, I'm dreaming. I am beyond this realm, right? And then you can bring in your higher self into the dream world and do things that only your higher self would conceive to do, like fly and create worlds and do all this stuff. Isn't that exactly what's happening now in this dream world? Like maybe it's a little slower, longer dream, maybe a little more dense than our dreams at night, but it's just another dream world. We can't argue with that. So who's dreaming me right now? Well, it must be a higher version of me, a higher density of myself. And so Ra says this, the higher self position is achieved once you've completed all your human incarnations, and you can't polarize anymore by incarnating, right? Then what do you do to go to seventh density? Well, you have to become the guide to all your past lifetimes and experience that from that point of view. And so when you become enlightened in a human lifetime, it's like a double win, because you're obviously becoming enlightened, which makes your experience a whole lot better, but you're also helping your higher self polarize, because your higher self polarizes by successfully guiding its past lifetimes. So like it's the ultimate achievement for the higher self if one of its dream lives becomes enlightened, right? So I sort of took this idea to the consciousness spectrum of David Hawkins.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about how I calibrated the other densities using the Hawkins scale.
Yep.
And so, you know, I can't know for a fact that this is the way it really calibrates any more than I guess David Hawkins could know for a fact, right? But just if we hypothetically put third density consciousness on a map of 0 to 1,000, that's the energy level consciousness can produce in third density, 1,000 being the limit. Well, fourth density, on all three separate people who I calibrated it on, without giving them any reference of what I was calibrating, they all calibrated the densities the same, which gave me pretty good confidence that this is probably true. And it said fourth density calibrates from 1,000 to 5,000. Fifth density calibrates from 5 to 20,000. Sixth density calibrates from 20,000 to 60,000. And then seventh density from 60 to 120,000. And then after calibrating the densities, I found a lot of synchronicities in the Hawkins material. I then calibrated what is the higher self position calibrate at, and it came through as 50,000. So you go through sixth density from 20 to 50. That's your incarnative experience. Once you hit 50, you become the higher self, and you have to polarize that last 10,000 points to get to seventh, right? Well, if that's true, if the higher self begins at 50,000, Hawkins says that archangels calibrate at 50,000. So I was like, oh, that's a good synchronicity. Archangels could be like a higher self, right?
Yeah.
If that's true, then what's the most amount of my higher self that I can bring through in a third density body? What's the capability this body has? So we could say the highest capability, the avatar level of Jesus, the Buddha, Neem Karoli Baba, Krishna, right, is 1,000. Well, that would be about 2% of 50,000. So in third density, we can, even an enlightened being is still only bringing through about 2% of the totality of their higher self. In fourth density, going up to 5,000, we can bring through about 10% of the higher self at the highest level. In fifth density, we can bring through about 40% of the higher self. And then in sixth density, we eventually become the higher self at the 50,000 mark. So you're like, wow, we're on this spectrum of consciousness that has so much room and possibility. And even what we conceive of as the highest possible achievement, a Jesus level avatar, is still just like a fraction of a percent of what's available. So to me, that's exciting,
Wow.
right?
Dude, as you're explaining this, what's coming to mind is that, and it does make sense, and I'm listening to you. And so just to imagine, and it does make sense in this other way too. Ah, it's beautiful. Thank you. So check this out. If being at the level which we know to a large degree how like Jesus or Buddha felt in this loving unity, right? Like that's the highest, and we can imagine what that feels. Just achieving that is the bliss of living in third density. It's the highest bliss. You can get there. Now, this does make sense in the way that fourth density entities talk about the level of love and beauty that they perceive that is beyond words. They say we cannot put into words the sensation of being in fourth density.
Yeah.
So that's because they're the percentage, which you said one in fourth density is what, 10%?
Up to 10% of the higher self.
Up to 10%, which
at the 5,000 mark.
So we can begin to it's hard to get a glimpse, but you can start imagining how this feels as you go up in the densities, the more you bring the higher self, and realizing that the higher self is actually the feeling of the higher self, I can imagine, would be the sensation of unity in all the universe. So right. To give an example, and maybe you can make a comment on this, but if in fourth density, see the difference between us humans here is that you can tell me about your experiences and I can relate to it. I can be empathic, compassionate, and I can feel you, right? I can say I can feel you. At the highest level, we can feel each other and say, okay, great. But in fourth density, we're going to become a social memory complex where we, all your past lives and everything, I can experience them. I can feel them truly as it was, as if I could grab all the versions of me, if I can divide myself into all the days that I have lived, right? If I could divide myself into, I don't know, 40 years close to me, to versions of me, and all together, I could say, okay, this is me. I know my experiences. It would be like collecting all of us together and having that experience. Then at higher levels, you become more aware of the creation and more and more and more. So this is what it's, I'm thinking here of that bliss that actually is the higher self. So
right,
that's beyond, like, that's just too much.
Absolutely, man. That's why I like to think of enlightenment really as higher self incarnation is what it is. And even the bliss of, a Ramakrishna or, Vivekananda, these sages that like live in this divine ecstasy, like they're just experiencing 2% of what their higher self experiences. Although, of course, at that vibrational level, you can actually integrate that much bliss, right? At the core of what we are a body of pure bliss, pure energy, pure light. The nature of light is bliss. If you could understand what it would be like to be a light body, I had this experience in meditation once where I felt myself expanding out in all directions, like I was particles of light, photons or something. And just with a thought, I could condense into whatever form I wanted. And it was like that experience of being light that had infinite possibilities. It was just like pure ecstasy, like eyes rolled in the back of your head ecstasy. And it was actually the ecstasy that was controlling what I became. I had to imagine what I wanted to be in this blissful sort of desire or whatever you want to call it. And then I would form into that. So if that's our true nature, then we are just, cracking the door open on what's possible. So it's like we have to stop pedestalizing enlightenment as this super rare state that only a few anointed ones achieve. We have to see it more like, a kindergartner might think about third grade as like, oh, the third grade, that's like the highest grade. But at a certain point, you look back at third grade and it's just infantile compared to what you're used to. Like, we have to see enlightenment sort of like that, where it's really the beginning point of where evolution starts, right? Life is hard and challenging in third density because we have polarity to wrestle with. Ross says it's at least 100 times more intense or challenging than any other density level because it's supposed to be. And at fourth density, we enter this kind of heaven world from that point forward. And it's just about polarizing farther and farther, which without the veil, it's a lot harder and takes a lot longer to polarize. That's why those densities last for so long, because they have access to knowledge of everything, past lives and the game that they're playing. So like Ross says, it's like a poker game where all the hands being played. You can't really become a good poker player if you're only playing while everyone's showing you what their hand is. Like, you could learn the game that way, but to really get good at the game, you have to hide the hands, right? And play with strategy and really contemplate your next move. So we're doing that here in third density, and we can see why it's such a valuable realm of consciousness for higher density souls to come back to. If they have some really difficult polarization they can't seem to gain in their native density level, if it's taken them a long time, they might say, let's go back to third density and see if we can get it that way. So I like to just flip the script on third density because it gets such a bad rap for most people who read the Law of One, that it's this shithole that we just have to suffer through and stuff. And it's like, no, we're really in this amazing realm of consciousness that is challenging, no doubt. But because it's so challenging is why it offers us so much reward at the same time.
Yeah, this is, in a way, this also is, to me, paving the way. I never seen it this way, actually. So thank you for sharing this, because you are right. And this is something that a lot of people see, which is, the other day, I said to someone that it was actually great to see from like his point of view that negative beings, for example, or the struggles that some people might be going through are simply, they're just part of reality. That's fine. What to me is, it's a bigger struggle, is for humanity to finally realize that who they are. Let's just say that, for humanity to still be delaying their realization of who they are, which of course, that's just a delay of the inevitable. But like you said, it is this idea that enlightenment is something that it's reserved for a few. And you see it sometimes in some of the spiritual communities that, it's almost like taboo to say enlightenment, or, yeah, we're working with enlightenment. So we try to use other words. We try to use because we as humans do this, we create a word and we, again, pedestalize it.
Yeah.
And so this is, however, imperative that over time, I suppose, humans start to see enlightenment as something common, so that eventually the vast majority of people, because that is our destiny.
Yep.
So in a way, it's almost, if I can use this crude analogy, it's almost like we are at the stage of the Ross said that there was, I think, a generation and a half, which in my calculations is about 1300 years, 1350, of the second density ancestors that we were, and the third density ones. So there was a transition there. And it's almost like in this transition, we are struggling to see that we are aware of ourselves, and that struggle is the same one that we're seeing right now, that we are, this infinite being, that we're all an organism. So this step is needed and is eventually imperative, like I said, that we all simply work with enlightenment as, say, physics or whatever else that we take for granted, and it's just normal. I mean, I'm putting it in words that are probably not the best, but it's just this state of beingness needs to become on more and more, as opposed to, this one thing that is reserved to a few. And, that's not for me because I'm so and so and so. But of course, this is all part of the shedding of the ego that is really what saying, no, that's not for me. I'm just poor little me here. That's not for me.
Yeah.
And that will pave the way to fourth density, which is really what we're going through right now, however long it takes. But like Ross said, and I think this is the most beautiful part, is that we don't have to wait for a strict evolution on, say, chemistry, but rather it's a conscious evolution that's happening now, because the difference is that we are working with spirit as opposed to, how it was from first to second and second to third. And working with spirit, or the channel that is the spirit, is just something that can happen now in a second, or it can happen, over hundreds of years. But this is the way, this is the only way in which we're going to polarize as a collective, not as, the
Right.
individual is going to become the guru so everybody can. No, we're all in this together, and we're all doing it. Which, by the way, again, thank you for doing this stuff, because you're putting it in a very plain way. It's not shrouded in some mysticism or anything. It's just taking all of these things. And I love that, because that's just how I resonate with all of this stuff too. So
Yeah.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I really do strive to just make it so palatable for anyone, not to make it feel exclusive, because I don't believe any of this is exclusive. I can't believe that attaining our true nature is some exclusive position. Maybe we have believed it is. Maybe for a time on this planet, vibrationally speaking, it was a lot harder to access. But we're in different times now. The planet is in the process of being magnetized to the fourth density, which means that all of us are under the influence of that magnetization going on, meaning it's just more available now than it ever has been. Like, truly, planet Earth, Mother Gaia, is becoming enlightened in the sense that she's moving to fourth density. And so Ra has this amazing passage where he talks about how distortions and blockages in our energy centers create friction and heat due to the unusable energy left over, right? And and I'm sure you remember where I'm going with this. Ra says that, in fact, all of us on planet Earth can create more friction and heat on the planet because we're one with it, right? So we are extensions of it. And the more of us who are living from this place of separation and anger and strife with one another, it creates heat in our own nervous system due to the friction of positive and negative energies rubbing against each other, fighting one another. And then the earth begins to reflect that heat eventually and absorbs it. And it becomes, maybe becomes something like global warming. I don't know, but I think we made this comparison last time I was on your show, that in the same way that when we go through the process of Kundalini awakening, which in my understanding is the fourth density body coming into activation, one of the things that happens is when someone's Kundalini is awakening is they'll have these burning pains through their nervous system, through their arms. It'll be down your shins, your back, your head. It's a very interesting, kind of like minty hot feeling that's unmistakable. And it's exactly that. It's the Kundalini energy moving through blockages in your nervous system, and the friction that's created due to the tension of moving through the blockage shows up as heat in your nervous system. And isn't that exactly what planet Earth's doing right now, at a time where there's more people on the planet than ever before, right? 8 billion or something. And the vast majority of them are still in a state of complete, the sinkhole of indifference, as Ross says, not positive or negative, but really wrestling between the two and really suffering, creating a lot of friction and a lot of heat. And the planet's reflecting that. But even that heat is part of the purging process, the transmutation of burning away the old third density karmas on this planet. It just doesn't happen any other way, right? It has to be expressed. It has to be seen in the light of truth and then released and let go of. And so collectively, although it's not comfortable to keep seeing all these forms of corruption on display in full 3D Technicolor every day, It's what we need to evolve, because we have to collectively see these energies, these service to self patterns that have been dominating our planet for thousands of years. We have to all collectively see them and say, no, thank you. That no longer serves us. That's no longer the path we want to energize or agree with anymore. We're going to start creating a world of service to others. And we really can't do that until we see the reflection of the service to self path and say, ooh, that's not the path we want. So again, we come back to this theme of our conversation today, I guess, that the negative path is also the creator. And by seeing it as the creator and loving it in its own way, that is how we actually depolarize it.
You just mentioned session 60, which I recorded last week.
Nice.
And the best part that really got me, excited was that there was one part that for some reason I said, oh, I'm going to tell Aaron about this when we record this video. Just beautiful how everything works.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, man. And so it has to do with this friction that we get. And this is what Don asked about the planetary changes, that he said this unusable heat that the planet generates. I don't understand it. It's spiritually, and just like you said, that's exactly what's happening. And so Ra gives the example of the entity, the human, that feels this discontent, and the phrase or the quote that I wanted to share with you was that the reason why I wanted to share with you is because one of the things that you see in the raw material is that you can read just one little, not even a paragraph, but just one sentence. And that sentence talks, it talks from a point of view. Let me do an inception here. You know how a word in Sanskrit has a specific meaning within the culture that has evolved from the belief system of the self. And so it has no direct translation into English. And when we do, it loses, just like meditation, for example. It's a word that it doesn't do honor to, the idea. There is no such thing as a, word. There are many words in Sanskrit that describe, meditation, like jhana and so on. There are different stages. And to us, meditation is just one thing. And it's even poor because it's a sort of reflection. You're meditating. That's not what meditating is. It's more like relaxing the mind. But anyhow, in the same way, Ra uses, or seems to use, language that is already built upon certain concepts. And these concepts, sometimes you can see it when you get the context of the conversation. And in this case, when they were talking about the unused energy or the unusable heat, they referred, and there's a part where they say, when the entity is not in harmony with its circumstances. Now, to me, this is implying that when the entity, if the planet is not well with itself, it generates this heat. So when you say that the entity is not in harmony with its circumstances, it's also implying that the circumstances actually is you. So it's showing how your body is not just limited to this, like you beautifully explained earlier. The air is actually, the skin is not a membrane that separates me from the environment, but actually that connects me with the environment.
Takes in the environment.
Correct. It's like we're swimming in the space, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're not in harmony with yourself, you generate, because this is what they were explaining, that how in the entity it evolves cancer. This is what makes up the conditions for cancer. So how can the external world cause me cancer? It's because I am the external world. I am that which I see, that which I experience is me. And so yes, taking that into the, like you just did the bridge perfectly. It's almost like I saw, this conversation coming. I love you.
Yeah, we definitely linked up on that one.
Yeah, we did.
Can I read the quote? I have it pulled up right here.
Please.
It says, if an entity is not in harmony with its circumstances, as you said, it feels a burning within. The temperature of the physical vehicle does not yet rise, only the heat of the temper, or the tears, as we may describe this disharmony. So they're saying, like, it's not like your body temperature goes
Right.
up when you're out of harmony with your life, but the temperature of your emotions and the frustration of the energy being released goes up. And it says, if an entity persists for a long period of your space-time and feeling this emotive heat and disharmony, the entire body complex will begin to resonate to this disharmony. And the disharmony will then show up as the cancer or other degenerative distortion of what you call health. When an entire planetary system of peoples and cultures repeatedly experiences disharmony on a great scale, the earth under the feet of these entities shall begin to resonate with this disharmony. Due to the nature of the physical vehicle, disharmony shows up as a blockage of growth or an uncontrolled growth, since the primary function of the mind-body-spirit complex is growth and maintenance. In the case of your planet, the purpose of the planet is the maintenance of orbit and the proper location or orientation with regards to cosmic influences. In order to have this occurring properly, the interior of your sphere is hot in your physical terms. Thus, instead of uncontrolled growth, you begin to experience uncontrolled heat and its expansive consequences. So it's like, wow, Ra is literally saying that if our planet's under enough disharmony, our planet will have to resonate with that disharmony on its surface, and it will throw off the cosmic balances of its orbit and its rotation. And that creates things like climate change and being out of balance with the cosmos around us. We know that everything's in this perfect balance astronomically. So talk about oneness, right? We're so connected that we can actually throw off the orbit of our planet.
That's right.
By being out of harmony with creation. That's a strong message.
I wonder if actually Maldek exploded in a way because of this,
right.
Because of the disharmony and not some, nuclear, it could be, but I'm just thinking like how we can affect the planet.
100% was my thought too. I don't know if Ross says that they specifically destroyed their planet because of nuclear warfare, or if that was Mars, but it just says their planet was destroyed due to great disharmony. Hey, that's definitely a possibility.
That's really intense, man. I never actually thought about that, but it's true. How we can cause this disharmony.
Isn't it amazing also that Ross says about Maldek that it took them like 500,000 years of healing in the astral planes before they were ready to reincarnate in a third density body and re-experience?
Oh, there was even a part where they said that they were so disoriented that even Confederation entities couldn't get near them.
Yes.
Like they couldn't, they were just in a limbo stasis or something like that. And then finally, when they started to realize that they were actually entities, like talk about the complete disharmony of not even being able to feel your root chakra, I suppose, at this point, because that's the first signal that you exist. And that Confederation entities couldn't do anything until they finally said, okay, yeah, I actually exist. What happened? And then, they were transferred this way. Oh, that's intense.
Ra also says, interestingly, and it took me again, like my 8th or 9th time of reading the Law of One to get this. But Ra says that talking about the Bigfoot, the 3 different kinds of Bigfoot, they say these are people that live, beings that live in your inner planes and live deep in your forests, and they're second density technically, but they're very intelligent, maybe like dolphins or something. And they know how to stay hidden well. Ross says those are the Maldek entities that had to reincarnate here. They had to regress in their learning so much that they actually had to go back to a advanced second density life form that lives only with the planet and the environment, because they destroyed their planet so heinously that they had to like relearn how to be a creature with the environment and be one with the planet and literally live in the forest. And so these Bigfoot entities are actually apparently the Maldek entities. And after a certain amount of, Bigfoot lifetimes, I don't know how many, then they can become a third density person and advance a little bit into a society. So it's like, there's actually some pretty heavy consequences for living in disharmony in the universe.
So yes, this makes sense. I mean, just from the point of view that I'm seeing it, how they say they almost dissolve themselves. I think the only thing next to that we have is the total annihilation of the mind-body-spirit complex, which is due to nuclear bombings, which is something that Ra explained, but which actually makes me think that then the entities of Maldek, it lends to this theory then of that how they created so much disharmony that their planet just became unstable, maybe not explode completely, but became so unstable that it started to just disintegrate gradually over time.
Yeah.
And so how the entities were at least rescuable to the degree that they felt their root chakra, and they had to go into second density, their orange ray, to begin to experience again, just like you're saying it. You know, they might have to go through this process of experiencing again what it is to feel, to be an entity, you know, and then, of course, because of their remembering process, they could have adapted to a higher level of second density. So,
Yeah.
wow, that's pretty powerful. That makes sense.
I have many theories on how this works on a planetary level of like, you know, we know the nature of positive energy is radiant,
Okay.
outward moving. So like a positively polarized planet, you could say, probably develops a kind of protection, natural inbuilt magnetic field protection against meteors and planetary cataclysms, because any kind of meteorite coming towards a planet would be sort of repelled away from it due to the radiant nature of the planet. Sort of like Ra says in the tarot, the positive path carries with it a kind of protection shield naturally, being the path of harmony, right? But the negative path is the path of magnetism. It attracts. So maybe a planet like Maldek that's becoming highly negative is also just attracting more cosmic activity towards it, and eventually gets destroyed. And maybe advanced negative planets, fourth density negative, fifth density negative, maybe they have to build protection mechanisms to destroy meteors, which wouldn't be hard for advanced ETs to do. But it would invite more chaos and entropy, because that's the nature of the negative path.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That makes sense. Yeah.
It's interesting, right?
And it also, you can see how, yeah, the positive radiating just wants to give, the negative absorbing everything actually causes the same. It's almost like an analogous way to explain the inner being of how much chaos is surrounded with, even at a planetary scale. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's ultimately the same thing at each level, right? The same as with the individual is how the planetary complex ultimately behaves, right? That's the beauty of oneness, is that it's really the same thing, just expressing at different density levels.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. Aaron, I'm mindful of your time, but I want to get to at least a couple of more questions. How are you in time? You good?
I'm great. Yeah.
Okay. So, or conversation topic, something that I had in mind, especially talking about all of this. One of the things that in the raw material, you know, we can divide the raw material into fascinating and interesting stuff. Like we said, history that has not only the history of the planet, but the history of the whole universe, and how it explains, you know, we can include everything from the beginning of the universe to where we're going to. That's the whole history. And there is the part that to me is a little bit more interesting, not that the other one isn't, but this one builds upon it, which is the mechanics or the science of metaphysics, which is fascinating in and of itself. But to me, the one thing that really at the end is what I get the most, and I don't know, that really resonates with me, or I want to know more, and I try to get from every single part of the raw material. And you can also see, you know, how raw sometimes they say they would answer Don's questions, sometimes like not really interested in the answer, just like saying, you know, of this we can say this and that. And sometimes like when they got into the archetypical mind, they were like, oh, students, reimagine and take this, like
this is what we really want to talk about.
Exactly. Like, okay, now you touch a nerve here, let's get into business. So there's this one part that I think is where they're always wanting to, and you could even see when they say like, please ask in another session if possible, or another working, because the energies are too low. So and sometimes they would just say like, of this we can answer briefly, that cattle mutilation is actually this and that, no worries.
Thought forms the end.
Yes. And you know how Don sometimes would pick up and say, yeah, I'm sorry to ask these questions, but
sorry to ask these stupid questions.
Yeah. Oh man, I just wanted to hug Don every time he said, forgive my stupid questions. And I'm like, dude, if you only knew how we would enjoy this.
I know, right?
Yeah. But anyhow,
he was hunting around, he would say.
He was hunting around for some line of questioning, to explain a little bit more. Another thing before I get into my topic is that you can also see when you appreciate this material how the combination of the three of them actually channeled Ra. You know, this principle that we know is Ra, this principle of the universe that Ra represents. Ra is not an entity that is this in the universe. It's just, again, a channel of this perennial philosophy that exists in all parts of the universe, and they call it the law of one. They're humble messengers of it. And to see that, speaking of analogous, how Carla, Don, and Jim, with their specific energies, they created this triad that was capable of channeling this information. And Ra says this specifically, funny enough, in session 61, when they said, you know, they emphasize, no worries, you know, it's all about the harmony that you guys have, basically. You guys have perfect harmony, and you're able to channel, what's the word they use? The pattern, energy pattern that is Ra, I think is what they say. So that lends a little bit more of a clue as to what Ra is, not as an entity, but as an energy, right? A pattern, an energy pattern, which, not to deviate even more, but Kuo, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is the entity that they started channeling, which is a combination of a fourth density Hatan, fifth density Latui, and Ra. They also said in one, oh, you should enjoy this channeling if you get a chance. I think it was in 1988 or so, where Ra talks about, not, well, Ra, part of Kuo, but they talk about Christ consciousness, and is about the question that Jim asks Kuo and says, how are these entities of the Confederation able to pass the challenge that Carla, because Carla always challenged them in the name of Christ. She was so devoted to Christ. And they go on to explain a long essay on Christ consciousness. And they, in several parts, they're a little apologetic for saying something like, you know, it's not that Jesus is the Christ, it's that Jesus is the representation of this Christ consciousness. Like what you had as Jesus was, you know, the all loving, the logos, basically incarnated here, and is, you know, they say it in a way as to say, like, sorry to say that, you know, Jesus is not, you know, the being. I mean, it's still special. It's even more special because of this. It's what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
And so in some of the paragraphs, there's one part where they say that they tell Carla and say, maybe the most disturbing thing, because Carla was channeling, maybe the most disturbing thing we will say for this channel or for this instrument is that we are actually in her mind, meaning that they are not, you know, an entity somewhere, and that paragraph is just beautiful. I'm going to share it with you when we're done. They say that because Carla has actually strengthened so much her roots of the mind into being able to channel this principle of Christ, is that they're able to speak through her. So that's how they get past the challenge of the Christ, because they get into this, they match basically what Carla is in terms of this energy that she's able to channel. And so there's so much more that they say about the Christ there, but it's just to explain the essence of how we are in resonance with other entities that give us this information, right? So in any case, the part what I wanted to get to is that Ra is always excited, and they want to get more into the information that is about self-realization. That is the information that they always want to talk. And when they say, you know, becoming the creator or realization of the one, in my understanding of what we are, it's the same realization that we have when we go, say, the direct path of Ramana Maharshi and self-inquiry. and like becoming the creator to me is realizing that one self, that one field of consciousness that we are. So anything that has to do with that is really what fascinates me. And I always try to get in the raw material here and there to explain in my videos. It's just how that realization of the one is actually present in you, and you can always just go with self-inquiry and not just realize it intellectually, but live it. And living that actually, to me, unlocks everything else that you're reading on metaphysics and Kundalini and everything. Just abiding from there, just living in that presence is what expands yourself into everything else, including service to others. Like you said, it's just indigo ray activation just goes over the board into service to others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. I loved listening to your expose on that. It is about living the path, living the law of one ultimately is what we want. It's very helpful to know all the teachings of the law of one. Definitely a great start, but that text doesn't come alive. This until you start living it, until you become a living example of the law of one. Then it's irrefutable, right? It's like, I don't need proof, scientific proof that this was really channeled by an entity. It's like, I'm living this text. It's becoming a part of me. And that's all I need. That's good enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the part where I want to always expand. And for myself, that's what I do. I just love that it is so simple. It's not this complicated thing, because one of the things that we can get into the raw material is that, oh, it's so complex, I'm not going to be able to understand that. It's just, start from that point of view that, again, I don't think I'm grateful for anything else more than it is what we call the direct path into just realizing that oneness in you. And from there, everything else just makes sense. From there, right. Anything that you can read or listen to, it's just part of that simple model of unity and you living it, because it's not about intellectually, like I said, just saying that, oh, okay, yes, I'm consciousness. That means that everybody's conscious and everything's conscious. It's about living that consciousness and living that way of being. So
yeah
anyhow,
absolutely.
Dude, you said you are, I think I need to catch up on your series, but where is that going? Like, how far do you have it planned? Is there anything you can tell me about the spiritual intelligence?
Yeah, so I am about 1 month away now, almost a month, from launching 4D University, which is a online platform. It's sort of my attempt to make a virtual academy for consciousness expansion. So I'm super pumped, man. We're going to start with 3 courses in the curriculum, and you have to take them in order because they kind of build off of each other. The first one's called Master Your Mind, which is really more like Advaita Vedanta teachings and really getting you to understand what ego is and how it works and how to transcend it. The second course is called Meditation Mastery, which gets you into a deep meditation practice each day, which, as you know, rapidly accelerates spiritual evolution. And then the third course is called 4DAP, which stands for Fourth Density Ascension Protocol. And it is really an advanced yoga practice course for really getting into the nervous system with these integrated yoga practices and breath work and things like this to begin purifying and opening the nervous system to allow that fourth density ascension process to begin, because it really is a neurobiological process that has to happen within the body to make way for, we call it Kundalini, but it's fourth density energy. It's a vastly superior energy level that we need to prepare the way for. And so I've been really excited about that program, which is going to be a 3-month program that just takes you through from beginning to end. Kind of, this is how the journey looks. We're going to build a daily practice slowly but surely and be on this journey together, facilitating everyone's awakening process that I think is going to be really powerful. So that will be available on July 1st, which I'm very excited about.
Nice. You had this. I didn't know about this. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
So July 1st.
A lot of the spiritual intelligence stuff I teach is all of the practices that really facilitate a lot of the things I teach there is going to be in 4D University. It's just stuff that I need a lot more hands-on training with people to teach them, and not just stuff I want to give out for free on YouTube and just say, hey, do this practice and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Because these are really advanced practices that can really stimulate blockages to release that, people who undertake this journey who don't have some guidance can end up with a lot of what we call Kundalini problems, a lot of mental psychosis, too many things coming up at once that they can't deal with. So it's important for me to provide a space where we can teach grounding, self-pacing, how to deal with these symptoms, how to manage your pace a little bit. All that stuff is going to be very highly emphasized in the program.
I love that you're starting with the foundation, which is, to me, the Advaita. This is the beginning of everything. In fact, this is one of the things that I'm also excited to start doing, which is to start to build a foundation for people on the non-duality aspect. The foundation of all mysticism has always been non-dual.
Yeah.
No matter if we usually associate it because it's a lot more open in the East, but it's the foundation of every other mysticism, from shamanism in the indigenous tribes in the Americas, all to the Nordics and Christianity, Islam, Sufism. Everything has this same understanding. So I love that you're starting with that, because that to me is always the foundation. And like you said, there are so many pitfalls when people don't have this foundation and they start doing this work and they start to advance. And even Ra, speaking of the law of one, Ra emphasizes this and says that we should be, they always advise to be careful with activating or skipping activation of energy centers and going to higher energy center activation. So this sounds really exciting, man.
Yeah,
I love it.
You can invite great imbalance, is what they say.
Right, you can invite the great imbalance. That's true. That's it.
So a lot of teaching on spiritual balancing and all of that is important. But you're right. It's the know yourself principle from the disciplines that we have to start with. Know yourself before anything else. Know
thyself. That's true.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for being with me again and hanging out, having some law of one discussion. I appreciate everything that you're doing, Aaron, because let me tell you straight up, genuinely, I live for this. I enjoy just simply, like, my mind goes here and the whole day, you know how it is, you just enjoy this. And to find people like you who are doing this in a very open and caring way, not only open, but caring with true love, that's really empowering for all of us who are still, going through the process of simply enjoying life and seeing, okay, there's other people who are doing this. We're creating this fourth density planet. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here. Thanks to everybody who's been watching. I appreciate all of you always being here. Aaron is loved by everybody, so I'm not going to say, if you don't know who Aaron is, then you definitely have to check his channel, but I don't know what you're doing here because you should know Aaron. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, brother. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, man. I'll see you in the next time.
Sounds good, man. Take care.